And getting you details now of a UK government scheme that is set up to prevent terrorism. Now, a review of the same has put out details of how there is a constant attempt to radicalize UK Muslims, where Kashmir is brought up again and again. Not just this, there are toxic Khalistani elements who are also indulging in the same. Some of these areas that are of growing concern and recommendations that have been made for improvements to tackle Islamist extremism as the primary threat to the country. This review that has put out details of Islamist and Khalistani extremists who are time and again spreading hate and fear and also radicalizing UK Muslims. It is an anti-India plot that UK has warned of, and a constant attempt to push a rhetoric which is coming from the side of Pakistan to create tension in India. So this is what the UK report has flagged out. Abhishek Kapoor, Senior Executive Editor, will join us shortly to give us further details of what this UK report states. But remember, this is a scheme that has been set up by the UK government to prevent terrorism. And they have now red flagged how there is a very conscious attempt by all these groups that includes Khalistani extremists and Islamists to radicalize UK Muslims, where Kashmir is brought up again and again. This is Islamist extremism that is the reason of primary terror threat to UK. And this is a sensational UK report that is red flagged how there is a narrative that is being pushed, a rhetoric to plan an anti-India design. UK is warning of that anti-India plot. Maj Gaurav Arya will also join us shortly. As remember, this is something that the Indian government has been aware of, and several intel inputs that have always pointed out towards the same. This is the UK report on terror that is signaling to all these details and saying that there is a rhetoric to create an anti-India plot which is using UK Muslims and potentially toxic Khalistani extremists. This is an area of growing concern, and several recommendations have been made to deal with these extremists. Niranjan is joining me on the phone line. Niranjan, well, India does understand that this is a potential threat. And now the very fact that this UK terror report is also pointing out towards the same. I really want to understand the geopolitical angle from you of how UK can work in tandem with India, and how is the Indian government now viewing this report?
Well, too early to see how the Indian government views it, but this is historically been a stand that pro-Pakistani, pro-Khalistan elements have sort of run amok in the UK. We've seen, in the latter part of last year when a few temples were attacked, Hindu communities were attacked, and very, very ugly scenes. And they abused Hindus, sort of targeted temples. And this is a review. This was a review into the UK government scheme set up to prevent terror, and it's flagged this report, which is primarily made to review, the scheme to prevent terror. Talks of how radicalization of UK Muslims over Kashmir and potentially toxic pro-Khalistani extremism are some of the areas of growing concern, and has made recommendations for improvements to tackle Islamist extremism as a primary threat to the country. And this is in fact a report that's come out, and a few years back, you will remember that Shawan Sen, our senior editor, had also traveled to UK, and he had done a sting operation on the Khalistani elements there who were operating from there, openly talking about the murders they committed, etc. Yes.
Yes. And Niranjan, I quickly want to tell you that Major Gaurav Arya is also joining us on the phone line. Let's get further details from him. Major Gaurav Arya, this is something that you have also put out details on, and India is well aware of this anti-India plot, this rhetoric that is being pushed. Now, UK also flagging the same. Where is the larger problem?
See, the larger problem is that, they have allowed, the UK and other people, they have allowed these radical, people to come in. They have allowed them to settle there. And then this starts. They have made ghettos inside. I wrote an article long back. It appeared in some newspaper. I don't remember, in 2017. And the article was called "The Caliph of London," and how radical Islamism and Khalistanis are actually, ripping about the fabric of Europe. It is not just London. Today, the UK has, understood that what is happening. But it is only a matter of time before Europe also rises up in arms. And it's like this very infamous preacher called Anjum Chaudhry, who's, I believe, of Pakistani descent. And this person has a huge fan following among radical Islamists in UK. And he actually said that, I want to turn Buckingham Palace into a mosque. And, there are actually ties with Al-Qaeda. There are ties with the Islamic State. And it's only a matter of time, I'm saying it's only a matter of time before, heaven forbid, UK gets a shock.
Right. Major Gaurav Arya, please stay on with us. Professor Madhav Nalapat, geopolitical expert, is also joining us on the broadcast. Professor Madhav Nalapat, isn't it high time that UK and Canada both understand that they are giving support to these pro-Khalistani elements, these Islamist extremists, and they need to work in tandem with India to solve the issue of terrorism on the larger level?
You're quite right. And the problem is that political parties in the UK have been extremely unwise in playing to the small extremist group. And because the point is, extremists have voting en bloc. They vote en bloc for a particular candidate who is favorable to them. And in a constituency where a small amount of votes can make a difference, their extremist vote tilts the balance. The problem is that candidate, in effect, becomes a spokesperson for the extremists. In other words, becomes somebody who is hostile to the UK, to the values of the UK, to the interests of the UK, and to the 90% of his voters who are not extremists. So this is the compromise that many MPs are making in the UK, policymakers are making in Canada, and I think every one of them needs to be identified and called out. For the simple reason that if you talk to them about the risk to India, frankly, 3/4 of them will not be concerned. The point is the risk to their own country, the risk to Canada, and the risk to the UK, the risk to the United States, the risk to France, to Germany from these extremist groups. And I think it's important to expose these groups, and that is now slowly happening, very slowly, because till now the attitude of all these countries was, the attitude, let's be honest, of many people in North America and across the Atlantic is, if it's not happening, on both sides of the Atlantic, it's not happening at all, it's not important. So something that happened it's not really important. Why do we bother about it? It's not a priority. The fact is, it is shown to be their priority as well, because their social structures, you said, are being challenged by extremists inside. Their political debates are being hijacked by extremists inside. And the tragedy is that large sections of the media have now, apart from the political parties, large sections of the media have become basically subservient to this extremist fringe. And they propagate certain completely false notions, such as India being a land of hate and Pakistan being a land of tolerance and mutual respect for all religions. So this is a kind of absurdity, this alternative reality that these extremists propagate. And I'm sorry to say, a large number of newspapers are basically towing that line, mainly because the organized effort of these extremist groups to win over journalists and editors in these publications. Look, flattery will get you into a lot of places. And flattery, and if I may say so, gets you a credibility that you don't deserve. So we are seeing an enormous amount of coverage of groups in the United States, groups in India that are opposed to extremism. The extremists are portraying these groups as hate groups, whereas the real hate groups are the people who implicitly such media are supporting.
Oh, yes, absolutely, Professor Madhav Nalapat.
Oh, yes, absolutely, Professor Madhav Nalapat. And the very fact that the UK government now realizes this becomes all the more important that they work with India on this issue. And those who are being provided a safe haven in the UK, strict action must be taken, and they must be taken to task in coordination with the Indian government. I want to thank you for speaking to Republic this afternoon. Mr. Gaurav Arya, I want to come back to you because it is high time that India has been dealing with this issue and raising this with the UK government and Canada as well. And if the UK realizes it well enough, then why not take strict action? Why not work in tandem with the Indian government?